Welcome to the Power of Music podcast, brought to you by JM International. Get ready to explore conversations with those making a difference through music.
Hello and welcome everyone to the JM Jeunesse Musicale podcast, a global network of NGOs that empowers young people through music across all boundaries. We are here in Banyoles, Spain, for the JMI Global. And the topic of this conference is Rhythms of Resilience. My name is Ricardo and I'll be your host. And for this episode, I'm joined by Suchet Malhotra, percussionist, music producer, and the program director for JMI's Ethno project, and Ethno veteran, organizer, and mentor, Myriam de Bonte. At the core of Ethno is its peer-to-peer learning approach, whereby young people teach each other the music from their countries and cultures. It has been developed over the past 32 years and embraces the principles of intercultural dialogue and understanding. One of the experiences of this JMI Global that really resonates with me takes place every time we get on the bus to travel back from the conference to our hotel. There's this group of people that almost immediately gets their instruments out and starts to play some of the most amazing music. They are, of course, the Ethno organizers and mentors, and you are the two of them that play along. Can you take us a little bit along and tell us what is happening there?
Well, music is at the center of what Ethno does, and it's folk, world, and traditional music. And there's a reason why folk is both a genre of music and it also means people. I think Ethno is about connecting with people, connecting people, and together through that connection, finding ways in which we can live together, we can make music together, and we can coexist. So it's a little bit of a microcosm for what the real world could be.
And we might not say that out loud or in so many words, but it's also a secret way to rehearse what we've been learning, because we all know there's a concert at the end. So the more we can sing, the more we can jam, the more we can play, the better the concert will be. But it's a kind of unspoken rule.
It's kind of the secret here.
Yeah, that's.
But I really like it because, of course, this is JM, and it's all about music, and there is always music because there's the concerts, but then even in the buses there's music, but it's different because it feels improvisational, it feels like a connection, it's not a rehearsed piece. And we heard also about the magic of Ethno. What is that to you as participants, mentors, coordinators? What is this magic of Ethno?
For me, the first time that I was on Ethno, that was in 2002. In Flanders, and I remember very well we were split up in small groups and we were learning. So one group was learning a Bulgarian song, another group was learning an Irish tune, and then like you're so focused on yourself, right? Because you're trying to get melody and you're trying to understand that crazy rhythm that you never heard before, and so I wasn't really aware of what was happening. And then at the evening there was like 50 people coming together. And so the guy goes in the front and says 1, 2, 3, and everybody starts to play the melody, and there's rhythms coming in, and I was like, it was like a tsunami of music that I felt, and it made me so happy that out of nothing in the beginning of the day we didn't have anything, and at the end of the day there was something so beautiful. And I think that was where I felt the first time this magic, this connection between all those people who never had played together before until the end of the day. And that was just amazing. I will never forget that, I think.
I have an interesting perspective because I'm a tabla player, and when I first went to Ethno, it was a year later than Myriam, but we met at that Ethno in 2003. It was also Flanders. And it has been a struggle in the past 5 decades or so in Indian classical music for tabla players to establish themselves as a solo instrument, not just an accompanying instrument, not just a rhythm instrument. And outstanding work has been done by great masters. Ethno did it in one moment by saying, you play tabla, can you teach us something from tabla? So putting tabla front and center of the music and also giving a space. It's not just a song, it's not just a tune, but it's a musical piece coming from a drum. I think that felt very empowering for me and very right and also like, oh wow, this is going to be so great when I hear so many people also learning and reciting. Myriam, on the bus, you actually recited me back the piece from 20 years ago, so she remembered it. So I think it's also very empowering to be at Ethno.
And what is also perhaps one of the great powers of Ethno is this, you just talked about the instrument. Can you name it one more time?
Tabla.
I've never heard of this, but I will see it being played at the concert. How is that a big role for the Ethnos as well? This different instruments, exposure to different music.
Yeah, it's a big part of Ethno, also a big challenge to get all those instruments involved in a correct way without making them simplify too much their melody and their potential. For example, if you have we have a oud player, they play with Carter tones, and it goes very easy that you say, oh, but leave that out, because the accordions, they don't have these Carter tones. But then it's also interesting to go and see how can we actually do something with that music that fits us all and that respects the music as such. And that's a beautiful process. And of course, you learn so much about interesting instruments you've never seen, about sounds of the world you've never heard. And
for me, it's also, just in the world of percussion, there are 5,000 instruments in the world. I have not encountered all of them at Ethno, but I've certainly come across many beautiful and fascinating instruments. And this is a way also to learn about different musical cultures and traditions, I think. And so much of this just happens by the way, because people are there with those instruments. I think it's really building a space for us to be able to connect with all of those different cultures and people. And as we see with Ethno, those friendships remain for very, very long time. I'm still friends, First Ethno, we're still friends. So,
do you know anything about how it started?
There was a folk festival in Sweden, in the region of Dalarna, which is a very strong folk music region, called the Falun Folk Music Festival. And its director, Magnus Bäckström, he's a well-respected musician, but also an administrator in the folk music scene. And he had this dream that folk music in Sweden would take its place alongside classical music and jazz, which by that time in the late 80s, I would say, had already been established as big genres. And he took a lot of inspiration from JM programs of that time, the World Youth Choir, the World Youth Orchestra. So seeing the power of bringing people together from those orchestras, he had the idea to do something like that for folk. But then how to teach the music, because usually it's always, people who are experienced musicians teaching, so it's a slightly top-down thing in that way. He decided to empower musicians themselves who were coming to Ethno. And that was, I think, a very radical idea at the time, but it caught on instantly. He invited the near countries, so around 120 people from 7 or 8 countries in that first Ethno. And very quickly it spread to Estonia first and then to Belgium. So in the first decade itself, there were already 3 Ethnos in Europe, and then in the next decade it traveled outside. The thing is, Ethno, it's an idea that can be replicated in different countries because there's folk music everywhere.
And as you are really Ethno veterans, and you've experienced also the development of Ethno through these years, these two decades that you've been part of this, what is your perspective on the development of Ethno, and how have you seen it grow and change?
Well, what strikes me is that we had this Ethno Fest for 30 years of Ethno, and it was partly live, partly online. And they actually got Magnus, right, as part of it. And he said, when I see what you're doing now, and when I see the videos, and when I see how it's going there, it actually feels the same. And I think that means it's a really strong concept, because of course things changed and some mentality changed in the world, in the countries also. So some things that we did before maybe we wouldn't do now, but that's not the core of it, that are like the way you do stuff, but the actual project, the actual Ethno, the concept of teaching each other, making arrangements on that, and then play a concert, that stayed, and that's everywhere the same. Only in the very, very first Ethno there was no concert. That's an interesting detail. But since then, that has been like the red line everywhere, and it works.
I would agree that the spirit of Ethno is the same. I think that's how Magnus put it, that the flavor is different. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but the spirit is the same. And I would say, like the early Ethnos, like for me, when I got into it 12 years after it started, it was about a lot of fun and learning with each other. As the project has grown, it has also learned from the regions in which it has gone. So Africa, and then Asia, and then it was in the Middle East, and it's gone to the Pacific Islands. It's actually on every continent now, and currently 40 countries are running the program. I think what we've seen is that we have something very special. It's not so easy to actually lay it down, but we are trying to create, let's say, the pedagogy around it and sharing that because it works so well. And we have a lot of projects around the world that are inspired by Ethno, but for example, are not limited to the age group like Jeunesse Musicale programs are, which for us is great because the pedagogy is to share and peer-to-peer teaching and learning. It's something that we see also in other traditions. Oral learning by ear, for example, in India, that's how most teaching is done when it's in the Guru Shishya tradition, so learning with the teacher in their home, particularly in the case of classical or folk music. We're also trying to develop, we have participants who are musicians, and then we have organizers who create the structure, and then we have mentors, which is what we're doing here, brainstorming on how the development of mentors has grown over the years and what do mentors need. And I would say in the last year since the pandemic, we have also embraced technology quite a lot. And that's that we are trying to deploy that, and we find that while it's not the same for some people as being physically present, technology has been a great tool for being more equitable, because people who cannot afford to travel or who have difficulties with visas can still come and be part of the music. And we also recently heard from parents of people with disabilities that for them, for their children, that was an amazing boon because they would have had difficulties in a physical gathering. So these are innovations that we see now in Ethno.
Just so the people that are listening have a very clear idea of an Ethno and what it exactly is, can you take us?
Usually it starts with a meeting first, and usually it's kind of a week, 10 days maybe. You start to meet each other, say something about your place where you come from, maybe you play some music to let your instrument show to the group. And then there's going to be a group of participants and a small artistic mentors team, which is usually depending on the size of the Ethno, because some Ethnos are like 10 to 20 people, some are 100. So of course you need a bigger team, but usually it's like 2 to 4 artistic mentors who are guiding the participants through the process. So in the beginning, the mentors might teach a morning song or a morning tune in a way to show how the teaching by ear is done, and also because that becomes then the morning wake up, like when everybody is arriving in the hall, you just start to play that song or tune until everybody's ready and everybody's there. Sometimes it gets in the concert, sometimes not. It doesn't really matter. It's like a start of the day. So after that, then the group will either learn from one of the participants, or they will be split in subgroups and then go in a rotation system where they will learn the music by ear. And then at the end, you put everything together in a big group where then you will make, under the coaching of the artistic mentors, you will make arrangements. Then this is kind of happening 2, 3, 4 days, maybe, depending on the length of the Ethno. And then you start rehearsing, just practicing. And then usually there's also like an excursion, going to swim to the lake, going to visit some town, which is also a very nice way for the group to bond, because they show to the outside world. And as you said, then they start singing on the bus or jamming in the train. And then you get this kind of interaction, which is very nice usually for people to see, outsiders. And then the group also bonds very well together because they feel they're doing something that interests people. And then it's time for the days of the concert. Most Ethnos have more than one concert, which is good because the first one is always a little bit hesitating. The second one is usually a bit bigger party. And then it's after party. And then everybody goes home. And then important to closure, because you don't know if you will ever see each other again. And that's actually I would say it's the sad but also the beauty of it, because this group only happens once with those people on that time. And so you have to do it now. You have to live in the now, because there is no future. I mean, that sounds very dramatic. Of course, there's a future, but like it's not like an orchestra that rehearses and says, oh, but we can't finish this, no problem, we will take it later. Here you have to do it now. And the concert is now, and the party is now. That's why everybody is so tired afterwards, I think.
And just because I can imagine that people are listening, they get very excited either about joining an ethno or about joining an ethno concert, or maybe even organizations that are like, oh, I would love to organize it. It sounds amazing. How can people get involved with this? How can they join or listen or organize?
I think attending an ethno, that's easy. You can go to JMI's platform, moobazar.com, and search, or the ethno.world website, where we have the full list of ethnos as well there, I think, and apply. And there are ethnos almost all year round, but there is a greater density of ethnos in the Northern Hemisphere summer, so June, July, August. And then attending a concert, I think most ethnos try to keep entry barriers very low, so either free or quite cheap, the ticket. Sometimes they are part of a festival like Flanders at Ranouter, for example, or Sweden at Binkhustaman. Then you, of course, have the ticket for the festival. But people look out for ethno concerts at those festivals. It's a highlight of the year, or it's a highlight of the festival for them. And then if you're over 30 years of age, because ethno stops at 30, the lower age limit varies country to country. So participating may not be possible anymore, but you could always develop as an artistic mentor, or a volunteer, or an organizer, or even a documenter, somebody who does the videography or photography. So there is a whole ecosystem of people who love ethno and who are connected with it and who tell the ethno story through whatever medium they are expressing their art in. I think those are creative ways. And maybe it's also interesting to know for people who are there that JMI, it's a membership-based structure. You have to be an organization, and of course you can contact us at the head office. That's what we do. info@ethno.world will connect you with us, and we give out information for organizations that are interested in running it. And if you happen to be in a country that is already running ethno, then we'd be delighted to connect you to the team, because many hands make light work.
Maybe also interesting to say that a lot of ethnos started to live stream their concerts, and so a lot of concerts are to be found online in the YouTube channel of Ethno World, and it's always nice to put the music on while you're cleaning your house or something, or sitting in the car and then listening to some other ethno. So it's also a nice way of keeping it going through the year and not have that gap until the next.
For the people that are still doubting whether this is the best thing ever, a very mean question, but what is your favorite memory of ethno in any form that you joined as a mentor, organizer, or a musician?
Ricardo, that question has us both in reverie, I think. For me, it's very difficult to say that. I've loved every ethno that I've been to. And I would say one of the great wins is that no matter what the challenges are, and there are challenges, because real life situations throw them up, ethno has always overcome. I would maybe share one example of that. In ethno Brazil in 2019, there was a moment where we had 4 concerts. It was a packed schedule, and somehow circumstances arranged themselves so that I was alone with the full responsibility for a concert for nearly 30 musicians. And I don't speak that much Portuguese, I can say bom dia and things like that, but and I had to do the sound check and get everybody together and get the group on stage and all of those things. And I did the first concert, and it was a great feeling. But then the next concert was at this very prestigious auditorium in Sao Paulo called the Ibirapuera Auditorium. And I reached the moment in the green room when we were all together before the concert, completely the sound check took a lot of time for me, and it was tiring as well in the sense of having to communicate and so on. And at the green room, I just decided, that's it, I've done everything that I could, and I don't think I can do anymore. And something shifted or changed for me, because from that moment on, I felt carried by the energy of the group. So I didn't have to do anything. In fact, I just enjoyed the concerts and played, and the group did everything. So I think for me, that was a remarkable feeling of trust in the whole ethno spirit and process, and to experience it firsthand.
There's a lot of very nice memories. One of my very favorite moments was on Ethnophonic, which is a training course for ethno mentors, and it's happening in France, in Paris region. I was there as a trainer, and we had the first concert, and the group was going a little bit. We do really hard work there. Like we teach music, but also we reflect all the time on how to teach and how to lead the group and what to deal with conflicts and all of that. So it's usually a week where everybody has his moment of I give up, I can't do this, like we all go through hard times, me included. And so there was different vans coming back from the concert hall, and in one van there was some crazy party that started, and it was just some kind of improvisational beatbox with some songs that we had been doing, and it developed into people conducting each other, guiding each other from one song to another. And so when they came out of the van, everybody started to join. Like the whole group was joining that one jam. And then we were in the hallway, and suddenly when it kind of faded out, the organizer lifted his hand and said, "Guys, tomorrow we leave at 9. And suddenly the whole group started to jam. Tomorrow we leave at 9. And it became like the guideline of the new part of the session. So from ethno tunes, we went into some kind of beatboxing. Tomorrow we leave at 9. And that was like, the power of that group was so, it was so powerful there on that moment. And that was very strong.
As always, what is the power of music?
What occurs to me as a thought right now is connecting without words, creating understanding without having to describe it. I think this is incredibly liberating on many different levels. For those of us who focus on the body, it's very relaxing to be able to do that. For those of us who focus on the mind, it takes away the limits of what we're experiencing. And for those of us who focus on spirit, I think, in Indian classical music, it's a well-known sort of endeavor to reach God through music, through the practice of music. So depending on which of those three, or which combination of those three, or all of them that you feel, and I think that for me would be the power of music.
Such a difficult and rich question. Thinking about why I'm doing ethno for 20 years now, I think the biggest power of the music, is to connect with people on a very deep level, without words sometimes, just by playing, and also the happiness, the feeling of being part of something, and the happiness and the joy for life that comes with the power, I think, for me.
Thank you both so much. My experience being part of a little bit of the ethno vibe in this conference, in the bus, in a few sessions that I joined, has been absolutely amazing. So thank you for that, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Ricardo, and thank you to all the listeners too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you on ethno.
Thank you very much for listening. If you want more information about JM or would like to get involved, visit www.jmi.net, where you can find more information and look for national member organizations. Or go to www.mubazar.com to get an overview of all the amazing opportunities for musicians. It would mean a lot to us if you could give us 1 minute of your time and review and rate this podcast. And in case you have any suggestions, please feel free to reach out to us through the JMI socials.